Tonight we're looking at Caleb off of the study sheets. So this is on my page 28. I think it might be different on your page numbers. 31, okay. And this is study number 8. And I'm going to read a couple of verses out of Numbers chapter 13, Numbers 13, and looking at verse 1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send out for yourself men, so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give to the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of their fathers' tribes, every one a leader among them." And when we get down to verse 6, we find that from the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, is the man who is sent out to be a spy into the land of Canaan. Okay, question number 1. How many spies did God tell Moses to send into the land of Canaan? So that'd be 12. 12 total. And Sharon is giving us a little foreshadowing that, that there's going to be 10 who toe the party line and 2 who tell the truth. Who was a spy from the tribe of Judah? And that would be Caleb, and his father's name was Jephunneh. Number 2, what orders did Moses give the spies in verses 17 through 20?
Check out the land, find out if the people were strong or weak, few or many, quality of land. The cities were strong, the land was fertile, a lot of trees, and that's just to bring back fruit of the land.
Very good. So heavy emphasis on the land. The land shows up several times. If you were to list them out, some of them seem kind of repetitive because Moses is emphasizing that. But he says, go into the Negev. The Negev is the south country. So if you look at a map of Israel today, it's that big V-shaped peninsula to the south of Israel proper. So a pretty large territory. And you're going to go down into the south country and check out what's down there. And then secondly, go up into the hill country. So again, if you see a topographical map of Israel, you would see that there's kind of a spine of mountains or tall hills in the center of the land running up through the middle of it. So go up into the hill country, see what the land is like, he said third. Fourth, the people, are they strong or weak? Fifth, is the land good or bad? Sixth, check out the cities. What are the cities like? Are they walled? Joshua is especially interested. If they're walled cities, then that's a different kind of warfare that we're going to be looking at. And then seventh, the land, is it fat or lean? And then once again, bring some fruit back if you can. Try to get some fruit. So heavy emphasis on the land, and that is so because the people of Israel are going to be in agriculture. They're going to raise animals and they're going to farm. So especially what is the quality of the land of Canaan that they're going to be going into. Number 3, in verses 25 through 33, we find the report that the spies gave to the whole congregation of Israel. What good things did they say? It's very rich, and the phrasing, flows with milk and honey, shows up. So that's a phrase that means it's abundant. It's really nice land. It's well watered, it's green, it's lush, it's productive. This land flows with milk and honey. What negative things did they say in verses 28 to 33?
The people are way too big.
The people are strong, the cities are fortified and large, and furthermore, the descendants of Anak, the Anakim, are there. And then they drew a conclusion from that, and what they said is, we are not able to go up. The people are too strong, and they got kind of colorful in their language, and they said, this is a land that devours people. They said, this is dangerous, that this, if we try to go into the land of Canaan, the land will eat us up. And then they come back to the great size of the Anakim. There are men of great size over there. So number 4, now we're focusing on Caleb. What did Caleb say in verse 30? We should by all means go up and take possession, for we will surely overcome it. So Caleb, can you imagine the pressure that Joshua and Caleb were under? 2 guys out of 12 total, and then the entire nation of Israel is kind of leaning over them. But these 2 guys stuck with it. And they said, we know what we saw, and furthermore, we know what God promised. And so we should by all means go up. We will surely overcome it. They're not denying that there are giants in the land. They're not denying that there are walled cities and fortified locations and army. They're not denying any of that, but they're saying God can overcome it. We must go up. What sort of character does this show in Caleb? Very courageous, very strong, and maybe at the base of that strength and courage would be faith. He's a man of faith. He believes God. He says, I know what my eyes saw, but I know what God said. And I'm putting my money on what God said. So now out of Numbers 14, the next chapter, I won't read all of it, but I'll read a couple of verses. Numbers 14, verse 1. Then all of the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. All the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. And so there's grumbling and moaning and crying. Question 5, how did the Israelites respond to the report of the 10 spies?
They wanted to believe them and stay right where they were.
Yeah. So they were listening to the 10 spies and not the 2, and they wept and they grumbled. Characteristics of Israel over and over again. And of course, Paul in 1st and 2nd Corinthians warns us, Christians in the church age. He says, don't be like them. Don't be like them when they grumbled and complained. What did Moses and Aaron do? They fell on their faces. They got down on the ground in the presence of the congregation, and they were as much crying out to God as they were anything else. What did Joshua and Caleb do? They tore their clothes. So again, a sign of extreme distress. They ripped their clothes, saying, no, you got it all wrong. You're coming to the wrong conclusions. By the way, this whole exercise of the spies is a great example of intelligence gathering, or how to evaluate data. So God usually tells us, I want you to collect information. So get the information you need. But the key to arriving at the right conclusion is understanding how to evaluate, how to analyze the data. And the 10 spies were going purely on what they saw and what they were thinking about militarily. The Israeli army versus the giants. The Israeli army versus the walled towns and cities. The Israeli army versus organized warfare bands of the Canaanites. Joshua and Caleb are evaluating the same information, but they're looking at it through a different lens, and that different lens is faith. So there's nothing wrong with gathering information. God wants us to gather information when we're trying to make a decision, when we're trying to figure out what is the right thing to do. Get the information, but then it is critical that we look at that information through the lens of trusting God. If we don't do that, we're going to end up with a wrong conclusion. So what did Joshua and Caleb encourage the people of Israel to do? The Lord will bring us in. The Lord will give it to us. Do not rebel against the Lord, they said. So, in the moment of the people of Israel crying out and groaning, and they're weeping and saying, why would God do this to us? Why wouldn't he just kill us in the wilderness? Why wouldn't we just die back in Egypt? Why all this? And now they're on the cusp of disobeying God. But Joshua and Caleb are pleading with him, listen to us. Don't rebel against God. God is going to bring us in. God will do what he said he would do. So don't turn your back on the Lord. But, question number 6, what did the congregation of Israel intend to do in verse 10? They were talking about killing them. That is kind of a knee-jerk reaction of human nature when we hear something that we don't like. Kill the messenger. kill the people who are saying something that I don't want to hear. And so the people are angry, they're upset, they're weeping, and now the reaction is, well, let's kill Joshua and Caleb. Number 7, God was very angry with the Jews in verses 11 and 12. What did he say to Moses? He said, I will smite them and I will dispossess them. I'm gonna deal with them right now. I've had enough of this grumbling. Moses interceded on behalf of Israel, and God decided not to punish the people by destroying them totally. However, they were going to be punished. And it's interesting that the punishment is exactly what they wanted. They're not going to go in the land. So the people said, no, don't make us go in there. Don't make us go in there. And God says, okay, you can stay out here for 40 years. And every single one of you that refused to believe me and obey me, you're going to drop dead. I've wondered how many funerals were there a day in that 40-year period. You know, I think that we know for a fact, because we have some of the census figures in the book of Numbers, something like 1.5 million young married couples, and that doesn't include children, people under a certain age, men over the age of about 50, 55, grandparents. So I think it's entirely plausible that the nation of Israel could have been 3, 4, 5 million people very easily. And if most of them are going to die, not the children, not the ones who are not responsible for their behavior, but all the adults are going to die, how many funerals a day for 40 years to deal with, 3 million adults? Wow. The undertakers were busy for 40 years. And so they were going to have 40 years of wandering, and they would die in the wilderness. Question number 8, God speaks about Caleb in verse 24. What does God say about Caleb? 2 things. He has a different spirit. And different than what? Well, different from all the rest of the nation. All the rest of the nation is rebellious. They don't believe me. They don't trust me. They don't obey me. But Caleb has a different spirit. And he also says about Caleb, he has followed me fully. I can hardly think of a better epitaph than that one. If God were going to write on somebody's tombstone a great commendation, he followed me fully. I don't think it's better. There's nothing better than that. Number 9, what happened to the 10 spies who brought the bad report? They died by a plague right then. They were killed by a plague. Number 10, what happened to Joshua and Caleb in verse 38? They remained alive. So they were not killed, and they did not die in the wilderness. Now, out of Joshua chapter 14, so we skip ahead a long time, 40 years we skip ahead to Joshua 14. And this is going into the land and the territories being divided up by Joshua, the various tribes and the allotments that they get. If you skip down to verse 6, Joshua 14:6, then the sons of Judah drew near to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, you know the word which the Lord spoke to Moses the man of God concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses the servant of the Lord sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought word back to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt with fear, but I followed the Lord my God fully. So Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and to your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God fully. Now, behold, the Lord has let me live just as he spoke these 45 years from the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, when Israel walked in the wilderness, and now, behold, I am 85 years old today. I am still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me, As my strength was then, so my strength is now for war and for going out and coming in. Now then, give me this hill country about which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day that Anakim were there, with great fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out, as the Lord has spoken. So Joshua blessed him, and gave Hebron to Caleb the son of Jephunneh for an inheritance. Therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite until this day, because he followed the Lord God of Israel fully. Now the name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba, for Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. Then the land had rest from war. What a testimony. So, question 11, how old did Caleb say that he was when Moses sent him to spy out the land of Canaan? He was 40 years old. And in question 12, how did Caleb describe his devotion to God in verse 8? What does this mean? I followed the Lord my God fully. He's not claiming perfection. He's not claiming sinlessness. But he is saying, if you look at my life, you will see that I was loyal to God. When he told me to do something, I did it. When he told me to believe him, I believed him. When he told me to do something, I was on. So he's saying, I've been loyal. I've been obedient. Number 13, according to verse 10, how long has it been since Moses made a promise to Caleb? 45 years. And Caleb is now 85. Isn't that something? I think this is just really amazing. What claims, and I mean specifically, about his physical condition does Caleb make in verse 11?
He's just as strong today as he was 45 years ago.
He says, I am still as vigorous as I have ever been. The same stamina that I had when I was 40, I've still got it. He says, for war and for literally going in and out for daily life. He says, if I need to carry a bucket of water up a half-mile hill, I can do it. I don't think I can. And I'm not 85. But Caleb, I think God, as a blessing to him, because the entrance into the land was delayed for all those years, I believe that God preserved, miraculously, if you want to say, the stamina and the strength of Caleb so that he was able to enjoy taking over a new territory and saying, this is my land. I claimed it, I cleared it, it belongs to me. And he had the vigor to be able to do that. So, question 15, what does Caleb want in verse 12?
The mountain.
Give me that mountain, or give me that hill country. So he's looking around, and he likes a little height. I do too. I like the idea that there's mountains and hills around. I've traveled, I think probably several people here have traveled out in the Midwest and West. And people who live in Indiana or Iowa or Nebraska, I'm sure they like that. They like, they talk about the wide open expanses and the endless horizon, and that's fine. Boy, when I'm in a place like that, I miss the hills. I really miss seeing some elevation. And apparently Caleb has the same idea. He says, I want that hill country. I want you to give me that territory right there.
I just got the impression that what he really wanted to do was drive the Anakim out.
So that's the next question. You're foreshadowing too. So number 16, who was it that lived in the territory that Caleb spoke about? Well, it's the Anakim. Who are the Anakim again? They're giants. The Anakim are sons of Anak, and Anak is a giant. So these are individuals, there's a multitude of theories about who these people really are, and you can track it back as far as Genesis chapter 6. And it's not 100% sure exactly who or what they are. One branch of the theories on this would be they're just really, really big people. They grow to be 7.5 feet high. There's another theory that says that they are actually not fully human. They might be some kind of weird hybrid, like demonic, fallen angels. That would be Genesis 6. I think that is plausible. I don't have a hard and fast dogmatic stand on it, but I think that is very plausible. And I think that when we talk about giants, we're not necessarily talking about 6'5" and 200 pounds. We might be talking about 13 feet high and 500 pounds. We could be talking about enormous, enormous people. And what sort of character does this demonstrate in Caleb? This is what Lori was getting at a second ago. He trusts God, and at 85 years old, he says, I want an adventure. I want to do something great. I'm not content to set up a tent over here next to this stream and start grinding flour. I want to conquer some giants. So give me that hill country. I hear there's giants up in those hills. And I'm going to go take them out. And he did. He said, I was denied the chance 45 years ago to come in and conquer part of Canaan. But God told me, Moses made a promise, I get to have a piece of property in here. And so, Joshua, you're now the leader. You were there that day. You heard Moses say it to me. And now I'm asking for your confirmation. I want your blessing on this now. I want you to say, yep, that hill country is all yours. And so Caleb has an adventurous spirit. What a great guy he is. He's not willing to roll over and play dead. He has a right to. He's 85 years old. He's already done his share of fighting. He's already done his share of hauling stuff through the desert. But he says, I want to serve God. Give me something worth doing. Don't just shut me off into a corner. I got something I want to do for God. And so he has a desire to do something great for God. He has courage. He has an adventurous spirit. He certainly has lots of faith. And so he is an interesting guy. Number 17, one more time we're told about Caleb's personality in this chapter. What are we reminded about in reference to him in verse 14? Followed the Lord his God fully, 100%. He did not back away. If you think about it for a minute, we've studied Bible characters a lot over the years, and you know this as well as I do. When you get into 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings and Chronicles, you run across a lot of kings, a lot of powerful men, but the number of men who were faithful to the very end is pretty small. There were quite a few guys who started out well and ended poorly. There's a handful, just a few, guys who started out poorly and got corrected and changed around and ended up okay. But the number of men who were faithful through and through, pretty limited. I think that should serve as a warning. It's much easier to go with the flow. It's much easier to ease up, go slow, say, okay, I've done my Christian service. I'm all set. It's much easier to do that than it is to say, I am going to be faithful to God to the very end. That actually is one of our goals for this year. Trust God fully to the finish line. Don't give up. Stick with it. So in question number 18, the last major reference to Caleb in the Bible is found in Joshua 15, 13, and 19. What did Caleb promise to the man who conquered the city of Kiriath Sefer? By the way, this Canaanite city, Kiriath means city, and Sefer is books. And so this is a city, but apparently it was a literature center for the Canaanite tribes. So what did Caleb promise to the guy who could conquer that? His daughter. Now we say, well, that's pretty barbaric. No. That's the way you did it back then. If you wanted to assure that your daughter was going to marry a quality guy, you put him to the test. And you say, okay, somebody who can go in and conquer a city, that'd be worthwhile. That proves to me you're serious. So he made that arrangement, and that did happen. What did Caleb's daughter tell her husband to ask from Caleb? Springs. So she said to her husband, and now he's going to convey to their dad, to Caleb, you've given us a fine piece of property. This is a really nice piece of property you've given us. There's one thing that would make it even better. Could we have the springs that go with it? And he did. He gave the springs that went with the field. And so he's not just a military adventurer. He's not just a guy who's a warrior and he lives to fight. He has an interest in the next generation. He wants to provide for his family. He wants there to be a family and children and grandchildren, and he wants them to be settled and stable. And so Caleb is a very interesting character, and we can learn from him. Questions or comments?
I did math. If 3 million people died over 40 years, that's 75,000 people a year.
Okay. 75,000 people a year, 3 million dying in the wilderness. So that's, I think, a couple thousand, several thousand funerals a day over the course of 40 years. All right. Okay, take your prayer bulletins, please, and let me share a few things that I know about.